Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining. Just giving everybody a moment to get connected. All right, looks like we still have a couple people getting connected, but I'm going to go ahead and get started to make sure that we are being respectful of everybody's time. Welcome. My name is Sarah Lorenz, and if you've never attended one of these before, we are Oklahoma Money Matters. We are the financial literacy initiative out of the State Regents for Higher Education and the Oklahoma College Assistance Program. And we do these Make It Count webinars once a month on a different financial topic. Every month it is different on the third Tuesday. This month, we thought we would go along with the theme of the month. And so we're going to be talking about love and money. I love this topic because there's a lot to talk about. I am a hopeless romantic myself, so I love that, love, but we do need to be practical about it to make sure we protect our finances when we get into relationships. And just because relationships can be complicated when you are trying to manage money as well as manage your relationship. So, as I said, my name is Sarah Lorenz, and I'm a certified financial education instructor, and I am one of two of our Oklahoma Money Matters team, and we do this every month. So what I'm going to do, and I know we may not all be able to take this poll, but I do a poll every month because you now know who I am, and I would like to know who you are. We have a lot of different people that join us today. So if you can, please go and just either in the chat, if you don't meet any of the things that are listed, or in the poll, please just take 2 seconds and let me know who you are. Looks like we got some college staff and some college students on the call. Glad that y'all are here. I'll give everybody just another moment to answer that poll before we jump in and get started. All right. All right, awesome. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to end that poll. And we've got lots of college students, college staff on the call. Okay, so let's get into it. If you've been on one of these before, you know that I always kind of go through just some norms and expectations on this call. And it's just to make sure that you and I both get the most out of this experience. And people who are watching this later on the recording will be able to get the most out of this as well. So I am going to ask for you guys to stay muted unless I specifically ask you to unmute yourself and talk back to me. That is because this is being recorded. And if you have watched anything via Zoom in the last 4 years, you know that sometimes background noise can kind of mess up the recording and mess up the audio. So we want to make sure that everybody can hear me. But I do want you to be interactive. I want you to talk to me in the chat. As we're going through this, we actually have an activity with this one. So I want you to go through and do that and talk to me in the chat about what we're doing. The other thing is this is basic guidelines for money, right? I am a certified financial education instructor, but I am not a financial coach. So I cannot tell you what to do with your personal financial situation. These are just some guidelines that I hope will help make things a little bit easier for you in the future. As well as, especially with this one, because we are talking about some things that could be a little bit triggering depending on your personal experience. I want to make sure that we are all being respectful of other people's opinions and thoughts during this call. And if for some reason there is something that feels a little triggering to you, you are welcome to step away for a minute and come back. And our agenda is we are going to start talking about, we're going to do an activity, but then we're going to talk about protecting your finances while you're in a relationship or you're married. We're going to talk about your personality and your money values. We're going to actually do an activity to find out what your personal money personality is. We are going to set financial goals as a couple. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about financial abuse red flags because unfortunately it does happen. And so it is something that you should be aware of when it comes to your finances and getting into managing your finances with another person. And then if, God forbid, something happens and you do have to start over after a divorce, we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that as well. So the first thing we're going to do is this activity. Now, you can write this down on your phone. You can open up a Word doc on your computer. You can write it down on a piece of paper, whatever works. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of these little blocks of things. I'm going to read out what they are, and you are going to either mark down how many from each of these blocks that apply to you. Okay. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. The first one, money should mainly be used for security. If you agree with that statement, you're going to mark a tick, mark down, or however you want to mark it. If you do not agree with that, then just leave it blank. And we're going to go through that with all of these. So the idea of carrying debt on a credit card terrifies me. If that is the case, go ahead and mark yes, or one, or tick mark, or however you're doing it. I do a lot of research before making a major purchase. If that describes you, then go ahead and mark that down. I know all my monthly expenses and I plan for them. I have a very strong work ethic. I am comfortable with the way I am investing in my future. I have at least one personal finance app on my phone. I bring my lunch to work most days, or to class, as the case may be. I never spend more than I earn. I enjoy using coupon apps. I check and monitor my retirement accounts frequently. If you don't have any retirement accounts, it's okay to say no on this one. All right. I read the business section of the newspaper on most days. All right. I'll give y'all a second to kind of total that one up in your head, see how many of those applied to you, and just keep that handy. We're going to go through 3 more sections just like this. All right. The next, if you feel like these apply, go ahead and tick them off just like in the last set, but keep them separate because we want to make sure that we know in each set which numbers applied to you. So money should mainly be used to help others. If you agree, check yes. If not, check no. I rarely shop and I don't follow fashion trends. I don't really understand why people are so obsessed with money. Money causes problems between people. I would invest in a friend's business because I trust them. I don't know how my money relates to my goals. I would never take a job just for the money. Giving time and money to causes I believe in is important to me. I wish people didn't think money was so important. I often lend money to people. I don't know how to bring more money into my life. Money equals energy. All right, I'll give y'all a second to total those up for section 2. All right, moving on to section 3. If you are answering section 3, like I mentioned with the other 2, make sure you're keeping these separate so we know which section you have the most in. So money equals success. If you agree with that, mark it down. If you don't, you can leave it blank. I frequently live beyond my means. For those of you who may not know what that means that you have to utilize your credit cards or other debt in order to make ends meet sometimes. Right. I chose my home based on its socioeconomic demographic, meaning I chose it because it was in a real nice neighborhood or because the people around me had money or looked like they have money. I like fashion and making an impression on others. That applies to you. Go ahead and mark that down. Hobbies are pursued to network and further my career. So you don't have a hobby just because you like to have a hobby, reading or gardening or whatever. All of your hobbies have something to do with furthering your career. I pick up the tab when I go out with friends because it makes a good impression. My job isn't fun, but the rewards are fabulous. My job gives me a strong sense of personal identity. If you feel like that applies to you, go ahead and mark that down. I only buy the best. Having money adds to your personal power. When I think of powerful people, I think of wealthy people. And last one, I chose my current job for the money. If that is the case, go ahead and mark that down. If that is not the case, go ahead and leave that blank. And I'll give you all a second before I move on to section 4. All right, so section 4, same thing as we've been doing, and this is the last section. So if you're just listening along, you will only have to hear me drone on about this for a little bit longer. All right, if I want it, I buy it. If that applies to you, go ahead and mark that down. I shop when I feel sad or lonely. I spend money I don't have to keep up with people in my social circle. I envy people with more money than me. Most things I buy make me feel good or more attractive. I don't think I will ever be able to pay off all of my credit card debt. I find it easy to justify my spending habits. I feel guilty about my spending habits. I envy people who have nicer things than me. I really enjoy buying extravagant gifts for loved ones. For me, more money means more happiness. Paying full price for something is worth it if I really need it. All right, that is the last of section 4. So go ahead and total up your tick marks and see how many you have in each section. And I'll give y'all a second to do that, and then we will move on. And I will tell you all about your money personality. All right, does everybody have everything totaled up? If you do, would you give me a thumbs up or a done in the chat? Okay. All right, now, those of you who are in the chat, I want you to tell me which set you had the most the most in? Was it set 1, set 2, set 3, or set 4? Set 1, set 4, okay. 1 and 2 tied. Okay. All right, when I very first took this, I was section 3 and section 4, and I tied almost equally between them. And we're going to go over them, and you will see what your answer said as your money personality. All right, so section 1, my friends with section 1, you are the accountant. So to you, money means security. Your strengths as an accountant is you balance your bank statement and get a thrill out of saving money. You turn the lights off when leaving a room and close the refrigerator door quickly to save energy. You become distressed when your partner spends impulsively. You shop only when necessary and you rarely use credit. You're conservative and not concerned with trends or keeping up with others. You are savvy and confident about money. Some challenges that you might see as the accountant. You may be a workaholic. You may keep a job you don't enjoy just because it pays well. You can be a cheapskate and sometimes can be overly judgmental about how other people spend their money. You may be so afraid of losing money that you don't take appropriate risks with your money. So that might be maybe you are really conservative in the way that you invest your money, so you're not making as much money as you could be making. All right. If you had section number 2, I know I had at least one person with section number 2. You are the social worker. And that means to you, money means affection. So the strengths of a social worker: you never let money take over your life. You spend your money on people and causes that you love. You can be happy with or without money. You remind the world that peace and compassion are more important than material wealth. Some challenges of people who are social workers: you may have a hard time taking money for your work. You may dream big, but find it difficult to set plans in motion because it's difficult for you to take advantage of your money and decide how you'd like what you'd like to do with it. All right. If anybody had section 3, section 3 is the CEO. That means to CEO, money means success. The strengths of the CEO personality: you like to own the best items, and you might stretch your finances to the limit to own the nicest cars, gadgets, and clothes. You are always looking for the next lifestyle upgrade. You live better than most, and you are an excellent negotiator because sometimes bartering takes negotiation ability. Some challenges that you might encounter: you never have enough money to satisfy your desires. You compare yourself to others, and you compete with those who have more than you, even if it's in your own head and you're not actually competing with them. To you, money represents power, and sometimes you can use it to control people. All right. And the last group number 4, you are the retail therapist. To you, money means self-fulfillment. Some strengths: you hate to wait for things that you want. Shopping is a recreational sport for you. It might be a hobby over yours. You get satisfaction from spending money and may often spend on things you don't need. Your credit card companies love you, and the clerks at your favorite stores know you by name. You are generous, and your thoughtfulness attracts a loyal group of friends. You always remember birthdays, and you never deny yourself the pleasures that money can buy. Your challenges that you might encounter as a retail therapist is your spending indulgence comes with a high price tag. You might carry credit card debt and you might feel some shame about that. When you're feeling sad, you may go shopping and be easily persuaded by others to spend things, right? You might be one of those people who, TikTok influences easily. At the end of the month, you look at your spending and have no idea where all of your money went. And the thought of budgeting sometimes depresses you. All right, tell me in the chat, how accurate was that for any of you? While you're doing that, I will tell you, as I mentioned earlier, when I very first took this, I came out almost equally between the CEO and the retail therapist. And it was kind of eerie how accurate it is. Now, that's not to say that you can't change, because I've been doing this job for about 5 years now, and I've been doing the financial literacy thing for about 7. And as I've gotten more into this and learned more about it, I have noticed that I am starting to lean a little bit more towards the accountant than I am the others, but it definitely, the tendencies are still there. All right, we had some people that said it wasn't super accurate, but we do have a few folks that it was pretty accurate about the part, except for the part about having lots of money. I sympathize. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this. Well, how does this play into love and money? Well, just like you have a money personality, so does your partner. And that is going to affect how you and your partner talk about money, because both of you were raised differently, right? You might come from a single parent home. They may come from a 2-income home. You may have grown up on the lower income spectrum. They may have grown up with a lot of money. They may utilize credit a lot, and you might be a saver where you don't like using credit or spending your money. And that can cause friction in relationships. So it's really important to make sure that you are communicating and that you figure out what these things are. For example, just in my own relationship, I have used to utilize credit a ton. I have become more of a saver, but I've always been very responsible with my money, even though I utilize credit probably more than I should. My partner, he came from a 2-parent home, or should I say, I was raised by a single mom who we struggled financially when I was growing up. So I became very, very in tune to making sure that the bills were paid. But then I did still utilize credit for things that I wanted instead of maybe saving up where I could have or should have. He came from a 2-parent home. His dad worked, his mom stayed home, but they were always not well off, but the bills were always paid. He never dealt with like food insecurity or anything of that nature. And so he's a little more free spending with his money. He also doesn't utilize credit the way I do. He got used to saving up for things. And so he tends to not utilize credit like I do. And so it definitely makes for interesting conversations in our house when we talk about making purchases together. So, and it is important because there was a survey done by the Institute of Divorce Financial Analysts that said of people who get divorced, a third of those people, 33 to 34% of those people, the reason that they cannot see eye to eye and that they file as the reason they get divorced is because of money. So it is important, regardless of what your relationship looks like or who you're in a relationship with, that this is a conversation you have and that you learn how to communicate with your partner if you're going to be successful. Because it doesn't matter how much you love a person that you want to be with, if you can't live life together, it's going to cause friction. So let's kind of talk about the different stages of a relationship, right? You have met someone, you think they're wonderful, you guys are ready to take the next step and maybe, put your foot into the long-term commitment and wanting to live together. Well, you can't just do this on a whim. I know people who do, and it usually ends up badly. you need to talk about it, right? You need to discuss who is going to pay what bills, or how are you splitting the bills? Are you splitting them 50-50? Does one person make more money than the other, right? And this even changes throughout a relationship. When my partner and I first decided to move in together, he was making significantly less money than I was. So I was paying a little bit more of the percentage of our bills than he was. Now he makes more money and we make a little bit closer to equal. So we split the bills 50-50 and we keep our money separate. You have to have a plan. You can't just go into this because it does end up badly, right? You end up getting on a lease, you guys break up, and then you're either stuck living with them or then you're stuck not having, not being able to get out of a lease, or ending up something that is going to mess up your credit because you have to break a lease. So it is very important to have these discussions, right? It's also important when you are just living together and you are not married to someone to make sure that you keep your money separate. Now, I know plenty of married couples that still keep their money separate, and that is a-okay if that is what works for you and your partner. But when you are not legally married, there is not a lot of recourse if you keep your money together. My partner works in the banking industry now, and he's told me on several occasions where he's had people come in, they are not married, they have joint accounts, they break up and someone decides to come in and wipe the account out. And here's the thing, because both of their names are on the account, they can do that. And there's no recourse that the other person has to stop them, and the bank can't stop them because they're a person that's on the account. So it's important to make sure that until you are ready to make a legal commitment, that you keep your money separate. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have like one account that is together to, put money into to make sure bills get paid every month or something like that that works for your particular situation. But it's important to make sure that you're not putting all of your money into a joint account with someone that you are not legally married to. And even sometimes legally married, it's a better option to keep it separate. That's going to depend on you and your partner. So think about housing, right? Are you going to move in with them? Are they going to move in with you? Do you both own places? Does one of you own and one of you doesn't? Are you going to pay the person that owns rent or not? Because here's the thing, if you move in with your partner and your partner owns a place and you don't have a lease for your half of it and you guys split up, you have no rights as a tenant, right? You have no lease saying that they have to let you live there, or that, they can basically kick you out without much recourse for you. And so it's important to make sure that you think about this and you talk about this, because look, no one goes into a relationship wanting the relationship to end, but the fact is that sometimes they do. So it is important to make sure that you are protecting yourself. In that same vein, making sure you don't get any joint credit cards or co-sign on anything for your partner. Say you co-sign on a car for your partner and you and your partner split up. Your partner takes off, right? Stops paying that bill. What happens? You end up being responsible for that car payment. And if you can't make that car payment, then that's your credit that gets hurt because you aren't able to pay that bill. Because when you co-sign for someone, you are putting your credit on the line for someone else, right? So it's important to make sure you don't do that. And then especially if you are in a situation where maybe you don't want to get married, right? That is becoming more and more prevalent in our society. And you want to, live in a domestic partnership with someone, but you don't want to actually get legally married. You need to make sure that you establish an estate plan for yourself, because unfortunately, accidents happen, things happen to people. No one is promised tomorrow. And a couple things can happen. One, your partner may not have access to things that you purchased together, if say they were purchased in your name, because there's no legal recourse for them because you guys aren't legally married unless you put them in your estate plan. We saw this a lot with same-sex couples before it was legal for them to get married, where they would live together for years and years. One of them would pass away, and because they didn't have an estate plan, a power of attorney, things like that, their partner was not able to get access to their house or assets that they had because it was in their name. They may not even be able to get in and make decisions for their partner because they weren't legally married. So like in a medical field, they would end up defaulting to that person's parents or a sibling who maybe doesn't actually know what this person's wishes are. So it's important to consider those things before you move in with someone, right? Make sure that you're talking about it. Make sure if you purchase things together that you're documenting it. You purchase a new couch together. Well, document how much each person paid for what, right? That's important to make sure that you are getting the equity that you put in for these big purchases that you are making when you split up. All right, so you've decided to take the plunge, right? You want to get engaged, to be married. You need to start having some frank conversations because there probably will be more instances where you are merging finances, right? So you need to talk about what your money personalities are together and separate, right? You need to discuss your goals and their goals and values when it comes to money. If they want to have a house with a white picket fence and they want to save for retirement and have a vacation home and do all of these other things, and you would be perfectly happy, living in an RV and traveling all over the country and, kind of seeing where life takes you, that's going to cause conflict. There's nothing wrong with either one of those scenarios, but it's going to cause conflict in your relationship. So before you legally attach yourself to someone, it's important that you talk about those things, right? Consider a prenup. I have had some people who I've said this to and they gasp like, well, why would I want to do that? That is just expecting your marriage to fail. Well, here's the reality. 50% of marriages fail. And it has a lot of times not anything to do with the couple doing it wrong. And nobody goes in thinking that it's going to end. But having a prenup protects you and your partner to make sure that if something does happen, that you do end up getting split up, that your assets you had prior to getting married and the assets you've acquired together are split equally, and that it protects both of you. So it actually is a lot of relationship self-care that you're doing preemptively, because your prenup doesn't necessarily have to be just because when it ends, this goes to this person, this goes to that person. It can also have different provisions within the marriage, depending on what your financial circumstances are, right? You should both check your credit history, right? Make sure that there is nothing that is going to creep up and cause problems between you, right? When you marry someone, if your credit becomes linked to theirs, yes, it is technically separate, but your credit is going to become linked. IRS, for example, can come after your spouse for your taxes, right? If you don't pay them. So it's important to make sure that before you are legally tying yourself to someone, that you are making sure that they are at least monitoring their credit, right? Like they don't have to have great credit. Not everybody has great credit. Sometimes managing credit can be hard, but you want to make sure that they are being financially responsible, that they're not taking out a lot of debt and then not paying things back or all kinds of things like that, right? Talk about where you're going to bank, what that looks like. Talk about who is managing the budget. Is it something that you guys do together? I have several friends who, one person is responsible for the budget and the other person isn't. So they have guidelines for spending of what they need to talk to their spouse about and what they don't. But then there's some times where they sit down and have meetings. I have friends who will have weekly budget meetings with their spouse. So they sit down and talk about what their money looks like, if somebody overspent, or if they have other spending priorities that have come up for their children, or for something going on with work, or something with their housing, or, they had a repair that needs to happen on the house. They talk about and make all of those decisions together. So it's important to sit down together and develop what your spending guidelines are and what your spending priorities are as a couple before you get married. And it's important to keep doing it once you've gotten married. And you need to be honest and communicate, right? There is a phrase that not many people have heard of. It is called financial infidelity. And it is when you hide financial issues from your spouse. Maybe it is you go and spend money on something and don't do, you don't tell them, or you have a ton of credit accounts that they don't know about, right? You need to be honest and communicate with your spouse, because what you do financially is going to affect them financially and vice versa. So it's important that you have those conversations and do it regularly. All right. Also, what I did not say on the last slide, but I will say, it is also important that you talk about what your wedding is going to look like, because somebody may have the want to have a big lavish wedding. The other person might be fine with just a very small ceremony and taking the money that they would have spent on the wedding and investing it, or putting it towards a house, or other goals that you guys may have as a couple. And it's important to discuss that, to come up with a budget together of what you're going to spend, and to make sure that you aren't kind of going crazy and that you're both on the same page when it comes to what you're doing. So when you get married, you need to make a list of all of the accounts that you both have. Make sure that you keep that available. So if something happens to one of you, that the other one has access to those financial things that will affect them, right? Make sure you're updating your forms, your beneficiary forms on, for your work, for your insurance, for all of those things. This is really important. I have heard so many stories of people, especially in second marriages, where they never updated their forms. They forgot that they had, their ex as the beneficiary in their life insurance policy. They get divorced, they get remarried, they have children with this next marriage, and something happens and all of a sudden they pass away unexpectedly, and the life insurance policy that they had now can only go to the ex. It can't go to the current partner. So it is important to make sure that you get all of those forms updated and that you keep them updated depending on how life changes, right? If you have children in the marriage, if you, end up doing anything like that. Right. It's important to make sure you tackle finances as a team. Even if you're keeping your money separately, it's important that you sit down and you talk about money together to make sure that you are working together for the goals that you have as a couple, whatever that may be, right? Sit down together and set up short-term and long-term goals. One of my favorite old bosses that I used to have, he and his wife, he told me this story once, that he and his wife have what they call their annual meeting every year, generally right around New Year's Eve. They will both take the day off of work. They will go to a coffee shop together and they will sit down and they will have an annual meeting and they will talk about their goals and the goals that they set the year before. What did they do? Sort of their wins as a couple, and maybe things that they could have done better as a couple with their finances and with their relationship, right? And then they look and set goals together for the next year, whether that is financial goals or something else, right? It is important that you always work as a team with the person that you are married to, right? It's also important, get out of debt. The debt that you have together can very much affect your ability to spend, your ability to save, your ability to reach any of those goals that you guys have as a couple. And it's important that you work together to make sure that you are tackling those, right? Also make sure that you save for the unexpected. Y'all, things happen, medical bills happen, your pipe busting in your sink, under your sink happens. You have problems with your car, you have all sorts of things. It's really important because financial emergencies can put a tremendous amount of strain on your relationship, not just as you as a person, because, you know, you got sick and ended up in the hospital, but now you as a couple have to be able to pay off this medical bill. They have to be able to, you know, take on responsibilities. If, say, like, you get laid off, now all of a sudden your partner is having to foot all of your bills, including theirs, until you can get something else, right? So it's important that you talk about those scenarios and that you make sure that you have money back for it, right? Make sure that you're both making retirement a priority. If you guys are planning on being together long term, you have to plan for the future, right? You have to plan for the fact that at some point you're both going to want to retire and you're going to need money to do that. So it's important to make sure that you get out of debt and that you prioritize your retirement as a couple. Right? It's also important, if you need to, seek professional advice, right? There are certified financial planners and financial coaches out there, you know, and I understand the argument of a lot of people that you don't necessarily have the money for a financial coach or a financial planner, but there are plenty of them out there that are very cost effective and can help you as a couple have those discussions about money and your priorities versus their priorities and your spending personality versus their spending personality, and to help you mediate between the two of you and make sure that you are going together to get your goals, right? But even when you are married, right, you are putting all of your things together, it is still important to make sure that you protect yourself for a myriad of reasons, right? You protect yourself in case there are health issues or issues with your home, or one of you unexpectedly passes away, right? It is very important to make sure that you're looking at things like health insurance for both of you, making sure you have homeowners and renters insurance on your property, because things happen. I mean, especially here in Oklahoma, right? Who doesn't know someone who has gotten their house hit by a tornado at some point, if you've lived here for any period of time? You know, life insurance comes in incredibly handy. You know, I have a friend of mine who is just now in her early 40s, and about 5 years ago, her husband, who is a couple years younger than her, passed away unexpectedly. You know, he was in his mid 30s at the time. You know, no one expects for that to happen, but it does. So it is important that you make sure that you are taking care of your spouse. It is just as much about taking care of them and your family as it is taking care of yourself, right? So make sure you have things like life insurance, because it is a statistical fact that many spouses, especially women, sometimes men, but especially women, when their partner passes away unexpectedly, if they didn't have these things in place, they end up struggling financially. So it's important to make sure that you have that in place to protect the people that you care about, right? It's also important to make sure you have a will, or if you have a significant amount of assets, to make sure that you have a trust set up, to make sure that any transfer of property of yours goes to your next of kin, your spouse or your children, smoothly, right? Because if not, it can get locked up in probate. It can, you know, assets can get frozen to where now your partner is having to not only deal with the grief of losing you, but is also having to deal with all of this legal headache of trying to get access to things that were yours jointly. Right? And it's also important to make sure that you set up a power of attorney. This especially is important if you are not getting legally married. I mentioned this earlier. If you are one of those people who would gladly live with someone, but never want to get legally married, you need to make sure you have these things set up, because as a married person, you will have more rights to the assets of the person that you are married to. But if you are living with that person, it doesn't matter if you've been living together for 25 years. If they pass away, legally, you are not their next of kin unless they have all of this paperwork in place to say that you are the person that they want to have all of their assets. Okay. So that's really important to make sure. The other thing that's important to make sure that you protect yourself is from things like financial abuse, right? I can't be talking about love and money without at least mentioning this briefly, right? In domestic violence type relationships, whether that is female or male, the abuser in 99% of cases uses financial abuse as a means of control. And it's important to understand what these are, what the signs of them are, to make sure that you don't get yourself in one of those situations. Or if you start noticing that you are in that situation, that you notice that it is a big old red flag and that you need to get yourself out. So as you see here, this is what is called the power and control wheel. If you work in the domestic violence space, or have ever been to therapy for something along domestic violence, they utilize this to get you to kind of understand how it works, right? They will utilize things like economic abuse or coercion or threats, intimidation to try to control the other person. Economic abuse is the number one that people see because it is the easiest to manipulate. And by controlling people's money, you then can control them. And you get to a point where maybe you can't leave a bad situation because financially you don't have the means to get out of it. So some things that you need to keep in mind, some signs of financial abuse that you need to keep track of, whether you are dating or married, right? Preventing victims from having or keeping a job can be a sign of it, where you're sabotaging them. You are sabotaging childcare or transportation or other arrangements that prevent them from being able to work. You go to the victim's work and harass them, which then makes them get fired. And so then they can't provide for themselves, right? Refusing to work and making them take care of you. That is considered financial abuse. Now, there's a difference between you physically cannot work and you are, say, like on disability, and someone who just can work, is able to, but won't. They are just insisting on being taken care of. And this happens in both genders. So this is not something that we see just in male relationships or anything of that nature, right? Also, withholding access to basic needs, withholding access to being able to go to the doctor, withholding access to food or groceries, or limiting what they can or can't have access to at the store, right? Not allowing the victim to access their family finances. Just because one person in a relationship is taking care of the finances doesn't mean the other person shouldn't have access to looking at the finances at any point that they want, right? It shouldn't be a big secret. If you and your partner, if you say, look, I'm not good at budgeting, I'm not good with math, you tell me how much money I have to spend every week and I will go with that, right? You communicate, that's good. That's not financial abuse. But if you have a person who is in charge of the money and then will not let you have access to the debit cards, the credit cards, will not let you have access to looking at your financial statements to find out where you are, that is a giant red flag. Also, taking victims' money, spending money, using the victim's credit without permission, maybe going and putting things in their name. I've seen this happen with people that I know who have gotten out of these situations where all of a sudden they find themselves multiple thousands of dollars in debt, and they didn't realize it because their partner was able to use their social security number, their information to get credit in their name. And it just leaves the person trying to pick up the pieces afterwards. And then they get out of the relationship and financially, they're responsible for all of this debt that they never incurred. Also, not allowing the victim to have their names on any of the accounts. This kind of goes back to not allowing them to have access to their money, right? If your paycheck is going into an account, your name should also be on it. And if they won't allow you to do it, then your paycheck shouldn't be going into their account, right? It should be mutual. You should have access to your money at any point in time. Sometimes every cent is tracked, even if the money is yours. Now, yes, you need to track your money, right, to be successful at budgeting. But if they give you $100 and is like, this is your spending money for the week, they should not be nickel and diming every single thing that you spend that $100 on, right? That is your money, and they should not be nickel and diming it and tracking every single cent that you spend on everything. Right. And then again, goes along with the using credit without permission, stealing the victim's identity, using their name to make purchases. This actually happened to my aunt. She got out of a domestic violence situation, and come to find out he had purchased a bunch of cars in her name. Now, mind you, this was not in Oklahoma. This was in a different state, but he was able to purchase cars in her name. He was able to do all kinds of things in her name because he had access to her social security card and to her other information. And, you know, you get someone with shady dealings who isn't going to catch that they are using someone's social that is not theirs. It is very possible that they could do that. So it is important to keep an eye out for these things and protect yourself, regardless of the type of relationship that you are in, whether you're living with someone or you are engaged to someone or you are married to someone. These could happen at any point. So it's important to make sure you keep an eye out for those things. All right, so let's talk now kind of briefly about divorce, right? No one goes into a marriage wanting to get divorced, right? Like I have never met anyone who gets married with the intention of they are going to get divorced. But it happens, right? It has happened to me. When I got married to my first husband, I never planned on us getting divorced. I came from a divorced home and I was like, nope, I'm never doing it. But it happens, right? People are incompatible. People get into marriages for the wrong reason. You know, people just grow apart. That happens sometimes. So it is important to make sure that you know what you need to do to protect your money, and your assets, so you don't end up in financial trouble when you get divorced, right? There's always going to be some rebuilding because you are splitting assets that you guys have had, but make sure that you keep these things in mind, right? Get help from an expert, talk to an attorney. You know, they have divorce financial analysts out there for that exact reason, is to look at your finances and help equitably divide what assets that you guys have purchased together. Educate yourself, right? If you don't know anything about finances because you've let your spouse do it this whole time, then learn. There is plenty of free resources out there to get access to, right? Make a list of all of the assets, bank accounts, anything that you need to know about, because your attorney is going to ask for them, because they're going to have to go and equitably distribute the assets that you guys have acquired together. Right? Make sure you check your credit, especially if you think that there has been some sort of financial abuse going on. Make sure you know what debts you are responsible for and what debts you aren't. Right? Open an individual account, especially if you have a joint account, right? Make sure that you separate your finances from your partner, right? Close any joint accounts. Now, depending on your legal proceedings, you may have to wait until the divorce is finalized to close the joint accounts. But you can go and open an individual account and move your paychecks and things over there while you are setting this all up, right? Know what your stuff is worth. Get things appraised, especially if you have large assets, or even things like paintings, or maybe guns, or things that you have acquired together, cars, not even just your house, right? Make sure that you know how much those things are worth. Make sure you're talking to people about that, you know, your house. Make sure that you get your house appraised to find out how much that is worth, to make sure that if you have to sell it and split the equity, you make sure that you are able to get what it is worth. And then make sure you update your documents. Going back to what I said before, make sure that if something happens, that your spouse, your ex-spouse, isn't the one getting your money if something is to happen to you unexpectedly. So those are all things to make sure that you are doing, right? And then as you're making a list, you're educating yourself on your budgeting, then start rebuilding slowly but surely, right? It is a process, but you can definitely come out stronger and better after that process as you're building your assets. All right, we have about 5 minutes left. Thank you guys for staying with me. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. And while you guys are doing that, I'm going to go ahead and share some resources. I always like to make sure that I include resources at the end of our presentations because, you know, what we talked about is sort of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to dealing with love and money today. So here's some things for you. So our OklahomaMoneyMatters.org website has tons of financial literacy resources that you can use, as well as our Love and Money learning module that goes through everything I just talked about and then some, about things that you need to know to make sure that you're setting yourself up well financially in your relationships, right? As well as some things that can help you if you find yourself in any of the situations that we talked about, right? The National Association of Personal Financial Advisors, you can go and find one that can sit down with you and your spouse and work through your money goals. If you do find yourself in a domestic abuse situation, the Oklahoma Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, the statewide Safe Line, the YWCA's Domestic Violence Hotline, and Palomar, which are both here in OKC, the Domestic Violence Intervention Services in Tulsa, Legal Aid Services in which is statewide. They can help if you can't afford an attorney. You can utilize legal aid to help get the help you need with legal, as well as the National Domestic Violence Hotline, as well as a couple great nonprofits that I didn't know. Strong Hearts, which is a Native American helpline when it comes to domestic violence, as well as Love is Respect. Question we had in the chat is, will you be emailing us this resource list? I normally within about a week will email everyone who is in attendance. I will email them a PDF of the slides as well as a link to this recording. So you will be able to see this again or share it with people who may need it. So that is all I had for you guys today. Doesn't look like I have any questions in the chat. I will hang back for a moment in case you guys do have some more questions. But if you have some questions that you wanted to ask that maybe you didn't want to ask in front of the entire group, that is a-okay. I have put my contact information on the screen. We travel a lot, so email is definitely the fastest way to get a hold of me. But feel free to contact me if you are looking for a resource. As I mentioned before, I can definitely point you in the way of resources. I can't give you any personal financial advice, but I am happy to point you to some resources or some people who may be able to. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. Definitely make sure, especially if you are a student, that you join us next month. We will be talking about your financial aid offer letters with our friends from You Can Go To, which is our college access initiative. We appreciate you guys so much for coming. You have a great day.